Hi and welcome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about vaccinations, and I'm actually going to go through the clinical studies. So the different phases of clinical research, I'm going to explain that to you. We're going to talk about some of the categories of vaccines that are being researched, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about herd immunity. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the phases of clinical study, and this is actually something that is done with pretty much every drug that comes to market. So there are usually 4 phases. So phase 1 is usually the smallest grouping, and in phase 1 what they're trying to do is they're using a small quantity of the population, both well and ill, and they are testing whether or not there are any side effects, but also most importantly they're trying to figure out what dose to use for the drug, or in this case vaccine. In the second study, it's a little bit of a larger grouping, usually a few hundred people, and again a combination of people who are both well and ill. And in this second study, they're also again looking for side effects, possible side effects, but they're also trying to figure out if the drug actually works at the dose that they've chosen in the first phase. And then lastly, they're going to move into the third phase, which is usually the longest and largest phase. So the third phase usually has anywhere from several hundred up to 3,000 people included in the study. And it usually runs for a year up to 4 years. Now, in the case of COVID-19, most of the researchers have agreed to keep it to 1 year because of the urgency of trying to get a vaccine out there quickly. So within this 1 year, they are doing something called double-blind placebo testing. So what does that mean? Well, in the portion of the population that's being included in the study, a proportion of them will be randomly chosen to receive the actual drug or vaccine, and a proportion of them will be randomly chosen to receive a placebo. Okay, and the double blind part means that the doctor or nurse who's preferring the drug doesn't know whether they're giving the drug or a placebo, and same thing for the patient who's receiving the drug. They don't know if they're receiving the drug or a placebo. Okay, so that's the kind of the randomized double blind placebo testing, and of course they're also still looking for side effects. Now, normally what then happens is once a drug successfully gets through phase 3, then the drug is approved, okay? And then phase 4 usually happens. And phase 4 is the long term where you're using the drug but looking for the long-term side effects over the years. Now, of course, the COVID-19 vaccine is not going to be going through that. They're going to be going straight from phase 3 straight into use. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about 3 major categories of research, and there are lots of other categories, but I'm just going to talk about the 3 major ones. So live vaccine research, inactivated vaccine research, and then the last one is genetically engineered vaccines. So live vaccine, as the name says, actually means that they're using a live version of the virus in this case, but it's attenuated or weakened, so it cannot cause disease, but it is active enough to cause an immune response. So live vaccination is probably one of the most potent types of vaccines, the most efficacious types of vaccines to use. However, it can be dangerous. There's huge amounts of safety protocols that are required when you're working with live active vaccine. And for the general population, for people who have compromised immune systems, it may not be safe because they may actually get sick from the vaccine because they don't have the strong enough immune response that is required in order for you to develop immunity. Okay. The second general category is inactivated vaccine, and that's essentially where they use the virus but they kill the virus. So that is then used to produce a vaccination. Now, the downside to that is that it is less effective than a live vaccine. So inactivated vaccines will require booster shots. So it's not a one-shot deal, literally. So for example, your flu vaccine is usually an inactivated vaccine. So you have to go and you get your flu shot maybe once a year or once every 2 years. So you've got to get a booster. Hepatitis hepatitis A is an inactivated vaccine, so you have to get boosters. Rabies is also an inactivated vaccine, so you have to get boosters for that as well. All right. Okay, and then the last category of vaccine research that I'm going to talk about is genetically modified vaccines. So they are not using any live virus for the research. They're actually creating a vaccine based on RNA or DNA. Now, the huge downside to this is, well, the upside is they're not using live vaccines, so it's super safe for research. But the downside is that once you introduce a modified gene into an organism, there's no turning back. You can't reverse the process. So you have to be 100% sure that your vaccine or your drug is super safe without side effects, because you can't turn it back after you've introduced it into the genome. And of course, there's the concern for it being transferred from one generation to another. All right. Now, lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about herd immunity, because that's a phrase that's kind of been floating around a lot. Herd immunity essentially means that you have to have enough of the population immune to the infectious disease so that those who are not inoculated are safe. So herd immunity, generally the agreed upon percentage is between 83 to 94% of the population has to be immune, so inoculated in this case, so that there's literally not enough people around for the disease to infect, so for it to spread efficiently. All right. And the reason why you want herd immunity is for those people who cannot be inoculated. So, for example, children who are too young to receive a vaccine, people who have compromised immune systems who cannot be vaccinated, or people are too ill to receive the vaccine, for example, cancer patients. All right. So now that you know this, how is the drug most likely going to be preferred? Well, more than likely, it's going to be the inactivated version of the vaccine that's going to be produced. That's what it's kind of looking like. So what will happen is you'll get a shot, and then you'll wait about 3 to 4 weeks and then get a booster shot. And then 1 to 2 weeks after your booster shot, you should have received immunity. So your body should have produced enough immunity against the virus. So keep in mind also that most likely, more than likely, the vaccine is going to be triaged. So that means that you, in the general public, if you're healthy and young, you're probably not going to get access to the vaccine right away. What will happen is triaging means the people who are in most need are going to get it first, and it'll kind of come out in stages. So now you know a little bit about the research and what herd immunity means, and essentially how the vaccine works. Hopefully you can use that to make an qualified, educated decision as to what you'd like to do to protect yourself. Okay? And thank you so much for listening. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to click the like button, and yes, hit that bell and subscribe so that you can be notified whenever I bring out new videos. Thank you so much for your time. I always enjoy chatting with you. Have a wonderful day and keep well.